Thank you very much, Radhika. And I'd like to start by thanking the International Manifesto Group and Friends of Socialist China on behalf of Moruto for organizing this event. Thanks as well to everyone in attendance. It's a pleasure to be here among all of you at such an important time. Last week in the United States, the Supreme Court heard a major case concerning Mississippi's abortion ban. Now, during this hearing, Justice Roberts made a very interesting statement about China and North Korea's abortion laws. He said he was concerned that existing US abortion law protected by Roe versus Wade is too lenient. And he incorrectly claimed that only China and North Korea allow for abortions as late as the US does. By this line of thinking, Mississippi's abortion ban should be upheld and the fundamental rights of millions of people violated, all to keep the US from becoming like North Korea. I'm not here today to focus too much on the Supreme Court, but I do want to ask a question that I believe is relevant to today's summit. How was it even possible in the first place for this kind of nonsense argument to be made by a member of the highest court in the US? There's two parts to that answer, in my opinion. For one, Justice Roberts was actually borrowing his argument from the very Mississippi lawmakers who passed the abortion ban, using North Korea and China as one of several arguments for what we might call their reproductive injustice agenda. But to zoom out a little bit, this kind of rhetoric is only possible if the vast majority of the American people have been actively taught that China and North Korea, or the DPRK, are unfree, undemocratic societies. This is the case, and we must understand how the US uses this manufactured ignorance to disguise its repression as liberation. To understand how this is happening, we also need to understand the truth about Korea, which is my topic for today. To begin, abortion is legal and widely available throughout the DPRK. Maternity leave is guaranteed for up to 240 days, longer than in most countries. Childcare and healthcare are not only free, they are considered constitutional rights. And in cases where children can't be cared for by their families, the state assumes full responsibility for their upbringing and education, even after that child becomes an adult. I'd like to say a little more about North Korea's constitution. North Koreans have the freedom of speech, religion, assembly, the right to vote, the right to personal property, protection from undue search and seizure, etc. In fact, there are many rights in the DPRK's constitution that are not considered rights elsewhere, particularly in the United States. Housing, education, food, equal gender rights, culture and arts, and as mentioned earlier, healthcare and childcare are all considered constitutional rights. There is even a constitutional right to relaxation. And what that means is everyone gets vacation time and everyone gets access to public vacation resorts. This is the reality of socialist democracy in North Korea, and it's just the tip of the iceberg. In North Korea, it's the people themselves who run society, whether through the state or mass organizations. Most people think that Kim Jong-un is running a one-man show, but this is a view born out of the same manufactured ignorance I referenced earlier. Most people who say this could not tell you Kim Jong-un's government title, which is very telling. His government title is the first chairman of the State Affairs Committee. The State Affairs Committee is a body that creates state policy, and it is not the highest organ of state power. That's the Supreme People's Assembly, which is a directly elected legislative body which has the power to elect, appoint, and recall the members of the judiciary, the prosecutor's office, the cabinet, and finally the State Affairs Committee, including its first chairman, Kim Jong-un. Assembly members are subject to immediate recall themselves, they get no additional salary, and they retain their regular jobs after being elected. There's no corporate campaign contributions or professional politicians in the same way that we understand them in the US or other imperial core countries. So what does the US mean when it says it wants North Koreans to enjoy freedom and democracy? Well, let's look at what they're actually doing. Today, the US has North Korea under siege. 28,500 US soldiers occupy South Korea. And every year, the US holds war exercises that rehearse invasions of the North, sometimes with as many as 300,000 troops. The entire South Korean military is under the command of the US and has been since 1950. Functionally, the South Korean military is a reserve US Army. South Korea has mandatory military service precisely because it needs to ensure that the US has enough cannon fodder for any potential conflict. The US also has North Korea under sanctions, which the rest of the world is forced to follow. North Korea can't trade with other countries, they can't get international loans, or import fuel or really much of anything else. North Koreans can't even import items that have metal in them. Think about that. Look around your room right now, or wherever it is that you're watching this from. How many things require metal? The screws in your furniture, the copper wire in your light bulb, the pipes that bring you clean water, everything. Sanctions impact everything from agriculture, industry, and medicine. Most things North Koreans need, they have to produce for themselves. There is no shipping it in from anywhere else. A study conducted by the organization Korea Peace Now confirmed almost 4,000 deaths in just 2018 from delays and shortages to UN aid programs caused by sanctions. These deaths included 72 pregnant people and over 3,000 children under the age of 5, better known as toddlers. The same study found, and I quote, 99% of pregnant women in North Korea did not have access to emergency reproductive kits to assist with life-threatening complications during pregnancy. The US's attacks on reproductive rights included sanctions against North Korea. When the US says it wants freedom for North Korea's people, this is what they mean. The freedom to die during childbirth or during childhood, the freedom to go hungry, the freedom to perish from preventable disease. With one hand, the US condemns human rights in North Korea, and with the other, it violates those very rights on its own. What else do we call it when they attack North Koreans' right to live, their right to food, their right to healthcare, their right to independently develop their society and raise their standard of living? Now, does this mean the DPRK is a paradise? It doesn't. But so what? The DPRK is a poor country with a history of colonial and imperialist exploitation, living in a hostile world bent on its destruction. It's not a paradise because it's part of the real world. It's a socialist society in transition to communism that is contending with the realities of actually existing imperialism. And in order to achieve communism, you have to have a certain level of material development. You can't guarantee food for all your people if you are prevented by sanctions from producing enough food. And you can't dedicate all your resources to improving society if you have to simultaneously fend off the imperialists who want to recolonize you. North Korea is a real human society that is subject to the same laws of historical development that apply everywhere else. It is a complicated place, but the most basic reality in North Korea is this. North Koreans are making every effort to construct a society that can provide for everyone's basic needs. And at every turn, they are impeded, undermined, and sabotaged by the forces of imperialism. Anyone who doubts this need only look to the new sanctions President Biden imposed on the DPRK yesterday, while the so-called Summit for Democracy was wrapping up. This is why the DPRK's military and nuclear arsenal are strategic necessities, because the US is still at war in Korea. To this day, the US refuses to sign a peace treaty with the DPRK because it would rather destroy North Korea than have peace. The DPRK says it needs all hostilities to end before it can come to the table, including sanctions, but the US refuses to do this. It could drop the sanctions today, and tomorrow the peace negotiations would begin. But it won't do this because the US will accept nothing less than the utter destruction of the North Korean system. It's precisely because the Korean War is ongoing that an understanding of and solidarity with the DPRK and the Korean people as one people are so important. Through 71 years of conflict, the Korean War has reshaped the world. This is your history too, not just ours. It is our shared past, our shared present. McCarthyism first blossomed in the United States in the international context of the Korean War. The military-industrial complex as we know it today was born through the Korean War. Today, imperialist aggression against North Korea is used to justify all manner of domestic and international oppression, from the abortion ban in Mississippi to the latest US defense budget, which stands at $768 billion and includes new funding for new militarization across the Pacific and the entire world. History is still in motion, and all of us are subjects of history. As human beings, we can either participate in it consciously or unconsciously, but we can never escape it. The US is pushing the world down a dangerous path, but it is not an inevitable one. Another kind of future is possible. Another kind of freedom is possible, but only when the masses become conscious of their role in history and organized to realize it. And to do this, we need to begin with the truth. We can't start with lies. The truth about North Korea can't hurt you. It can only reveal the truth about the system you live under, who your enemies are, and what role in history you have to play. Thank you very much.